Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Mustard Saves, and welcome back to another what I eat in a week / what's for dinner / whatever type of here's the food that I made type title you were looking for. These clips have been collected over the course of about 2 weeks, so there's no real daytime structure, but their main commonality between each other is that these are all things that I have never made before. For me, one of the biggest ways I try to keep myself on budget is I love to try out new recipes, and I know the idea of trying something new can be a little nerve-wracking. There's definitely always the chance that when you're investing your own time and money into a new project that it might not pan out. But when it comes to living on a budget, I definitely think it's important to get out there and try making new things to kind of mix things up in the kitchen, because it can definitely get stale making the same things over and over. So for these recipes, I tried using things that I've already used before, like pantry staples that I have regularly encountered, but I tried to look for recipes from different cultures or even just thinking of different things to try out, to use those same ingredients in just new combinations that I had never tried before. So I'm not going to try and say that anything in this video is authentic. I'm not going to try and say that I am like an expert on different cultures, but I definitely wanted to at least try mixing things up a little bit. And while I'm messing around in the kitchen, I just wanted to share it with you guys to show what experimenting could look like. So to kick this video off, you have been watching me attempt to whip up some homemade bread. Now, I have made bread before, but I'm still new to the hobby, so I'm not very good at it. But like I said, I still wanted to show you guys that even though you're not an expert, you can still have some fun and try out new things. My bread often comes out overproofed, very crumbly, and sometimes it's not even sturdy enough to make a sandwich out of, but it's something I'm hoping to get better at with research and practice. And luckily for me, my boyfriend is happy enough to have any kind of bread in the house, and he just generally doesn't mind being my guinea pig when I'm messing around in the kitchen. And neither of us are super picky to begin with, so everything does get eaten by the end of the week. The next morning after I made that bread, I was in the mood to make something cute and Pinteresty for brunch. It's pumpkin season and acorn squash has started appearing in droves, and I couldn't resist picking one up because I've always wanted to try cracking an egg into the circle just to say that I did it. If you've never had an acorn squash before, everything about them is completely edible from the skin to the seeds. So all I did was give it a good wash, and then I cut off the top just enough so that way I could get at the seeds and scoop them out to save them for later. Even now, as I'm editing this video, I still haven't done anything with them, so perhaps we'll see them in the future. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with them. Maybe I'll just roast them and use them like as a snack, or I could mix them into something, but I don't know. We'll make that decision later. Still focusing on just the squash at hand, I would definitely recommend using a sharper knife than I am using here. I thought using a bigger knife would solve the problem, but no, this is very dangerous. I don't think it's worth the Instagram pic of putting the egg in the middle of the ring, so I don't recommend following what I am doing here, but I did successfully acquire 2 acorn rings to do this project with. So all I did was I spread some oil, garlic, salt, and pepper, and then popped them into the air fryer at 360 for about 20 minutes to give them a head start. Acorn squash is perfectly edible to eat raw, but I didn't want to have like a crunchy squash with like the softness of an egg. And when you cook them, it does bring out more of the sweetness, so yeah, I went ahead and... With how thick I cut these rings, I probably could have fit 2 eggs in, but I didn't want to push my luck and potentially have them spill over, so I just stuck to one and put a lid over the pan to create steam to cook the egg on both sides without having to flip the whole thing over. And then to plate it up, I put the whole thing on top of a thick slice of toast and topped it with some ketchup and sriracha. And then what brunch would be complete without a nice bright yellow cocktail? I kept it pretty simple with just some equal parts of vodka, pineapple juice, and mango juice, And this was actually really nice. Like I said, I don't recommend cutting it into the rings the way that I did. I later on just cooked up the rest of the squash and made more eggs and did the same thing, but I just didn't put it in the ring. Because yes, it does make very good photos, but it is just not practical to do in the long run, unless you have a better knife than I do. For dinner, I was really craving coleslaw, so I started by just shredding up about half of my small head of cabbage. And for my dressing, I used sugar, salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, mayo, mustard, and some vinegar to thin it out. I don't think onion and garlic powder are usually in coleslaw, but I kind of just added them on autopilot, and it was actually pretty good. To go along with my coleslaw, I thawed out some pork chops and set up a little wet and dry battering station. For the wet side, I didn't have many eggs in the house, so I just used one and then bulked it up with a splash of milk and then some flour and cornstarch. I seasoned both halves with some garlic salt, onion, and Italian seasoning. For my pork chops, I wanted to get them pounded down to about half as thick as they were, but since I don't have like an actual meat tenderizer mallet, I tried using this small pot, but it does have little like spouts on the side, and it was making it kind of difficult to get an even layer on it. So eventually we switched over to using this glass soy sauce bottle, and that worked out a lot better, and they came out really good actually. So definitely don't have to go out and buy a meat tenderizer just to like beat something up. Just look for something heavy in your house. I've even seen some people use like rolling pins or something, but my rolling pin has handles on it and I didn't want to like knock off the handles by just beating up some pork chops. So use whatever else you have to get this done. But anyway, I passed them through my little dredging station, and then I cooked these in the air fryer at 360 for about 20 to 25 minutes with a flip halfway through. While those were cooking, I got started on making some brown gravy. Before today, I had never made brown gravy from scratch. I've always made them from like those instant packets, but I was out of brown gravy packets. And I did have all the ingredients to make gravy, so here was me attempting. I definitely did not use all of the butter that you just saw me throw in there. I fished it out before it completely melted because I was just like, yeah, no, this is a lot of butter. But I did add in a little bit of oil because I'd heard that both work well together. Some people just use oil, some use butter, some people use both. I think you just need equal parts fat to flour to get this to work. In total, I want to say I added about 1/4 cup of flour, but it may have been more because I was just kind of sprinkling it in until I felt like it was enough. From here, you're just going to want to keep an eye on your roux and cook it until it has darkened to your desired hue of brown. And I probably could have let this go a little bit longer, but my pork chops were calling me, so I declared that this was good enough and slowly added in a cup of water and a cup of almond milk. And you really want to make sure that you're mixing this while you're adding in your liquid to make sure that you don't get lumps. And I mean, if you get a little bit of lumps in your gravy, it's not the end of the world. It'll still be edible. It'll be fine. But, you know, just do your best to mix it while you're adding in the liquid. And for my seasoning, I just used some chicken bouillon, garlic powder, and onion powder, and let this cook on the stove for a few extra minutes to let all the flavors mellow together and for the gravy to thicken up. And here is my final plate. I loved everything about how this came out. For my mashed potatoes, those are literally just instant mashed potatoes that I added seasoning to. And then the pork chop came out super crispy. It was nice and cooked on the inside. The coleslaw was like so crunchy and refreshing, and it was just the meal that I was envisioning, and it was so good. So I was definitely super proud of how this came out. For dinner number 2, I had called ahead to 2 different stores trying to find pork belly because I really wanted to try making posam for the first time, but alas, they were out of stock, so I ended up with boneless pork ribs instead. So to get started, I put my pork into a bowl of cold water for at least 30 minutes to draw out any blood or other bits that may cloud the flavor. While I was waiting on that, I cut into a head of Napa cabbage and pulled out the inside sections that had the more tender yellow leaves and put the rest of them away for later. I just gave them a quick rinse and then liberally salted them with about a tablespoon of salt, and then also set those aside for at least 30 minutes as well. The salt is going to draw out the water from the inside of the cabbage and make them floppy and easy to use as wraps for the meat. If you can't find Napa cabbage or want to skip this step, you can use any other type of leafy green that you like. The usual ingredients for posam are garlic, onion, ginger, coffee, bay leaf, black peppercorn, and a fermented pepper paste called doenjang, but that was the only ingredient that I didn't have, so unfortunately I had to leave it out, and I just added more salt than is typically called for. And once I had everything in my pot, this went onto the stove at what was supposed to be a simmer for about 30 minutes, but as you can see, I completely overcooked the meat. I don't even have any excuses, it just happened. And yes, it was chewy, but we still ate it anyway. I served this family style on a big plate with some gochujang and radish kimchi on the side, and then my boyfriend and I also had our own bowls of rice. Flavor-wise, I would absolutely love to try making this again because, at the very least, it was really tasty. I didn't have the right kind of meat, so I can only imagine pork belly would taste much better. And also, if I had the fermented paste, it would have been really good too. But as is, yeah, this was very delicious. And the salted cabbage was so sweet and crunchy. I literally just sat and munched on those by themselves while we watched a movie with dinner. On another day of dinner, my boyfriend had had a long day at work and he requested that we have something cold, so I replied by making a Mediterranean bean salad with cucumber, bell pepper, tomato, olives, canned chickpeas, some feta cheese, an entire bunch of parsley, and a simple dressing of lemon juice, oil, mustard, 1 clove of minced garlic, and some salt and pepper. Red onion is also another beautiful addition to this salad, but my boyfriend isn't that fond of raw onion, so I kept those to the side. And as a side note, when you're making the dressing, please be careful when adding the minced garlic. This is not the time to be doing the mental conversion of 1 clove equals half a bulb, because raw garlic has a much different flavor. It's very spicy and can have a hard kickback, so give your salad dressing about 30 minutes to sit before you taste it and decide if it needs more. This is one of my first times buying feta cheese for any reason, and this salad was so completely delicious that I sincerely might start keeping feta around just to make this salad. I 100 out of 10 highly recommend giving it a try. And this was probably like our utmost favorite dish out of this entire week. It was so fresh and so crunchy and so delicious. This big batch was gone in like the day. Like we had it for dinner and then I think we had it for like brunch the next morning. And then to finish off this video, I did want to include my homemade bread one more time. This was another morning where I was in the mood for some Korean food, but I didn't want to make anything that would heat the kitchen up too much. So I decided to make another egg sandwich, and I was craving more of that salted cabbage. So I started by making some more of that using the other leaves that I didn't use with the posam. And I just cut them into strips to have this more of like a coleslaw type vibe. While I was waiting for the cabbage to get wilted down, I made a sauce to put on my sandwiches. I was looking for something sweet and spicy, so I tried a combo of honey, gochujang, sriracha, and mayo. And then once the cabbage was done, I just quickly fried up some eggs and put my sandwiches together. And overall, these sandwiches probably weren't my most favorite thing. I think they had potential, but I made the sauce too sweet, and then it wasn't spicy enough, and just like I said in the beginning, my bread didn't hold up very well this time, so the sandwiches kind of like fell apart a little bit. Overall, I'd give them an okay rating of like 6.7 out of 10, and I definitely will continue making egg sandwiches, but my bread does need some work and maybe a different sauce next time. And I think that's where I'm going to cut it off for this week, you guys. We survive most of our weeks off of leftovers and other simple things that I don't think are too terribly interesting to film, like cereal or something like that. But I hope that the meals that I was able to film showed you guys that you can try new things with ingredients you are already familiar with. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and as always, if you have any questions or just want to say hi, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you'd like to see more of this type of content, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye!